Hello there. Come on in. Come on in. I see you are freshly born. The wonderful, wonderful. Please have a seat. Yes, this is an incredibly important tutoring class. It's how to be a rich kid, right? You are a newborn Nepo baby, right? You have the goop of the womb still on you. And I think this is incredible. I told your parents that you need to come in as soon as possible. It can never be too soon because the kinds of psychological damage that being a rich kid, I think that the trauma of being a rich kid is honestly one of the hardest and most difficult traumas that anyone can go through. It's truly, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Okay, so what I'm here to do for you in this tutoring class is to set you up for success, right? I want to make sure that you are able to, grow up, be a rich kid, and are able to understand how to navigate, the unique situations of your predicament. So we'll go over some of the basics. We'll go over why it's important to discuss, being a rich kid and what does that mean, right? And then we're also going to discuss the do's and the don'ts, right? What you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's incredibly important because we don't want you to ruin your life by not understanding that you are inherently different than others, And of course, what I mean when I say ruin your life is that you're going to ruin someone else's life. Because if you get into an altercation with one of the poors, it's not gonna bother you too much. You'll just talk to your father, and your father's gonna go, and they're gonna ruin the poor's life. And you'll just have some guilty conscience, and that's fine. Everybody has a guilty conscience. I don't think you can get to this level of Nepo babiness without having a little bit of a guilty conscience. And actually, part of the reason why being a Nepo baby is so traumatic is that you inherit the guilt. You inherit the guilt of your parents, and that's honestly truly one of the things that makes being a Nepo baby so hard. It's incredibly difficult and probably one of the worst things in the world. So I will discuss the trauma of being a rich kid. Just something, think of it as a prologue to what will be your life. Okay, so let's talk about the basics, right? So you're rich. Your parents are rich. You're born into a rich family. You are new money, old money, whatever it is, you have money, right? You do not need to worry about bills. You do not need to worry about payments. You don't need to worry about your account being at a very low number or, heaven forbid, at a negative number. No. You have many, many zeros. You have many maxed out accounts where but what I mean by maxed out is that they are maxed out in contributions, right? Like you have a high yield savings account that's at its max. You have multiple of those. You have a 401k and a Roth IRA. You are set up for success, and you're barely a minute old. That is you. There are, of course, the others, the poors. That's what we'll call them. The poors are people that, they band together in number, right? And so what you want to do as a rich kid, is you want to make sure that you blend in, right? You don't want to come across as an other, right? Think about it this way, and of course, you're not going to really understand this right now. You are, of course, a Nepo baby or an actual baby as well. But othering is such a big issue within human society. Whether you're queer, whether you're like a person of color, whether you are trans, whether you're, whether you are any form of other, whether you're rich, all those things cause a lot of discrimination, right? That comes towards you, and it just you're gonna have to find ways to deal with it, right? And unlike being a person of color or being queer or being trans, rich people have thought ahead, right? And so they decided that they should discuss these things and make sure that their kids are set up for success right as they're born. Yeah, It's a true story. So, something that you need to understand then is that because of that, you being a rich kid, you are important, right? Your life and your essence, even, is more important than anyone around you. You know, that it doesn't matter who's around you. It doesn't matter if they say that they're rich. It doesn't matter if everyone else is a poor. You're a rich, and the poor, they don't matter, okay? And I do want to mention something here to you. Money isn't everything, and just because you have money that you're born with doesn't mean that you're not going to struggle. But I need to make sure you understand that just because it is not everything doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it. So a lot of the advice that I'm going to give you is going to be related to keeping said money. Okay? Okay. Any questions so far? Yes, goo goo gaga. Okay, let's go ahead then. So, why is it important to discuss this? I feel like I have been repeating myself a lot here, but let's discuss some more specifics. Being rich, being a rich kid, I mean, I remember those days. It is isolating. Nobody wants to hang out with the rich kid. Nobody wants to be, no one wants to compare themselves to you. Being better than everyone else leaves you feeling like you are, you have no peers. And so what are you supposed to do except, be the, the better human than everyone else? But that it leaves scars. It leaves emotional scars that, we are going to try and preemptively heal. Yes, because that is how that works. Also, why it's important to discuss is that jealousy and envy is a really, really difficult thing. And, you might find yourself in a position where someone is jealous or envious of you. And I think in those situations, murder is on the table. Envy is really, really dangerous, because if someone's envious, they might confront you. They might discuss it with you, and they might want to try and get closer to you. You do not want any pores to get close to you. No, 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 no. Why is that? You don't want pores to get close to you, because if they get close to you, they could influence you. And if they influence you, then you're being influenced by pores, and they are lesser than you. No, 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 no. You want to make sure that you have the upper hand at all times. And if push comes to shove, again, murder is on the table. And because you have money, jail time is really not something you can afford not to be in. So it is totally fine. We can figure that out, but that is why, you'll go to a private school. You'll make sure you have some rich friends. But even then, there are going to be some pores. We've tried really, really hard to make sure that scholarships are on the decline, and but they still exist. And so when you see a poor, just make sure, a customary spit in their direction, I think, is all that's needed to make sure your position is clear. Now, of course, your struggles as a rich kid is going to be minimized. And I think that one of these things, the poors constantly discuss about, the discrimination, and they discuss about how much they hate, being oppressed, but they minimize your own struggles, call you privileged of all things. That is such a blow to your psyche. I honestly, it almost brings me to tears just thinking about it. It's truly, I'm getting flashbacks. It's truly too much. It's too much. Okay, so let's move on then to the don'ts. Okay, we're going to discuss what you shouldn't do as you're growing up. Okay. All right. So, like I said before, do not open up to the pores. You do not want to be influenced by them. You do not want to be close to them. I understand some pores can be pretty. Some pores can be, they can be persuasive, where they lack business prowess and capitalist tendencies, they make up for it in conniving, conniving manners, They are very good at making things sound like they make sense, and when you think about them for long enough, it does make sense. But no, you should never have to think about something for too long for it to make sense. Because if it takes that long for it to make sense, then does it really make sense? No. You should just have common sense. That's right, absolutely. So, remember, have common sense, don't think too hard, and just make sure you understand that you are different than others, and you do not want to get close to the others, to the poors. Now, second thing that you need to do is you need to not discuss family matters. Family matters are very, very private, and this is something that the poors also do, right? They don't discuss their family matters with their friends, but something that they will do is they will discuss money troubles. Yeah, or they'll discuss smaller issues, right? Or family matters for them might be just what job do their parents have, right? They could be a blue-collar worker. They could be, a coal miner. Hell, they could be anything. But for you, your parents obviously don't have the traditional 9-to-5 job. No, they own multiple companies. They're working the stock market. They're influencing campaigns. They're making sure that the world is getting worse and worse and worse for everybody. And you don't really want them to know that because they might start to recognize that you are above them. And you never want the poor to recognize that you are above them. Why? Because they are higher in number. And so you want to make sure that you are in a safe position, right? You want to find, and we'll talk about this later actually, but you want to find a way to navigate through this and hide yourself, right? Come out as being a rich kid, but only when it's safe to do so. You don't want to come out to, as a rich kid for, just because you're it could be unsafe, you don't want to come out and then what if you're ganged up on, think of all of the trials that are going to happen and all of the lives that are going to be lost due to your father's, revengeful wrath against all of these people. It's really, you're protecting them as well as yourself. Okay? And you need to not reference your status. So this is the thing, right? As you're growing up, you're going to find that you're going to make a lot of friends. Because when you're rich, you naturally are very magnanimous and you end up being very charismatic. So it's just a feature of every rich person. So I highly doubt you will be any different. What you need to do is you need to make sure that you blend in a way that people think they know how much money you have, but all based off of presumption. Okay? Because if people presume that you are of a similar level to them, which you are not, then they won't ask too many questions, And so what you want to do is you want to be like a chameleon. You want to take some of the traits of the people around you and you want to dress like them as well, because really, it's really not about being, it's not about showing your richness. It's about being richness. Exactly. Now, this is going to come into play a little later, but, I do know that you came here through private jet, so because, I do live on my own private island, and your parents did have a meeting they had to go to, so they just sent you on your own with, like, sort of the pilot, but I think you did very well. What I do think that you're going to have to remember now, because this counts as your first vacation even, and you do not want to bring up vacations to the poors. It is such a no-no, okay? Because one, if you are from any, if you are from anywhere that in sort of the western region of the world, it's a little bit more difficult for you to have vacations, especially in more remote locations, right, or across the ocean. That type of stuff costs. I mean, it costs a little bit of money, and if I'm being completely honest, the poorest they can scrounge up a few pennies to afford a $2,000 plane ticket, and then lodging and food, and of course all the sites are going to be they're going to cost a lot, and even if they don't want to see the sites, simply existing in a place isn't really very fun unless you look at it. So, it is going to cost a little bit, but I'm sure they can scrounge up a few pennies to do it. So it's really on them. But that kind of thinking is not very helpful for you, right? You want to understand that just exists as a concept. They simply don't prioritize travel. And so when you travel with your parents, when you travel by yourself, and you go to all these extravagant places, you want to make sure that you don't discuss it with your local friends. Yeah, what I would suggest, what I found very helpful growing up, is have a little bit of a journal, right? Have a journal and discuss your feelings in there. And in the do's section, there will be ways to address sort of any feelings where you feel like you're bottled up. A lot of this is telling you to bottle up from the pores, but listen, the pores are strong, the pores are resilient, and you want to make sure that you blend in so much that they don't pick you out from a crowd as as a rich kid. Because they're always out for blood. And of course, if they do come after you, you will kill them yourself. But they're always after blood. I mean, like, they are the more bloodthirsty ones of the group. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so those are the don'ts. How are you feeling so far? Okay, yeah, absolutely, goo goo gaga. So let's discuss the do's, okay? What do you do as a rich kid growing up to ensure your safety, to ensure that you're able to, not, get as much trauma as is owed to you? Well, you need to be very vague, okay? Do be very vague about career choices. There's going to come a time when you grow up that you're going to start looking at careers. And people around you are going to start looking at careers. Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? A business person? Are you going to go into communications, into art? Are you going to go into theater? All of these things are very valid and very good ways to go. But remember, you are a rich kid. It doesn't matter what you choose. For your career is already predetermined by your parents. And even if you do not follow in your parents' footsteps, their money will be passed down to you. So even if you go and you fail, it doesn't really matter because you have the money from your parents. Your life is set. So what you want to do, especially because if you want to be very vague of your career choices to make sure that you leave your options open. Right? You don't want to discuss going for something unrealistic. Like you don't want to discuss going to clown school, right? Because going to clown school, I mean, it's quite embarrassing, to be honest. But it's also very fantastic, But some people might look at it and think, oh, but you might be wasting your time, If you, as a fellow poor, would you not want to go for something that would, get you more money? And to that, you'd have to be vague enough. And this is where passion comes in. You want to take up the facade of passion and be like, oh, I am passionate about clowns. And you want to be incredibly passionate about clowns or whatever it is. And use that as an excuse, okay? Okay. Second thing is that you do complain about money struggles. Now, how are you going to complain about money struggles as a rich kid? You're rich. You don't have money struggles. That's where you're wrong. Being a rich kid does not mean you don't have money struggles. So you can only afford 2 cars on your 16th birthday because you drunk drove 1 time and crashed your dad's car. And so he was only getting you 2 instead of 3. That is a money struggle, right? I mean, yes, it's also a disciplinary action, and I think, to be fair, quite a harsh disciplinary action, but still, it is also a money struggle, right? You can only afford 2 cars now. And so if you can only afford 2 cars, you're struggling with a choice. And so what you would discuss with your friends is, I don't have enough money to get these 2 things that I want. And I'm going to have to settle, or these 3 things that I want. And I'm going to have to settle for 2, but I'm just not sure, and my parents, they can't help me because they're really tied up, they I tried to discuss this with them and they were very angry with me, because they do their best. And that's the kind of thing you want to discuss with, right? You want to be vague. You want to be vague, and you want to let the pores fill in everything else. Okay? Also, you do want to keep tabs on who owes who. What do I mean by this? When you go out to dinner, you want to understand that the pores are penny pinchers. They care so much about money. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? So you want to make sure that you can tell them that you can pay what you owe, but you also want to be very careful about what you owe. And you also want to make sure that everybody else that owes you pays you back, because that is a telltale sign of a rich kid, is if you don't care about what the other person pays, right? And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get all the money that people owe you. Also, because being rich doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have dignity, right? You want to have the dignity to say that you are owed money, right? I mean, sure, that money could simply, could have completely, evaporated and it wouldn't have even made a dent in your account. Sure, you may not have even realized how much money they owed you, and then when you got it, you're just like, oh, some fun money. Whereas they're sort of, scrimping and saving to make sure that they can pay you back. But still, you just want to make sure that this is one of those things. The pores are very specific about this, and you really want to make sure that you can appease them, right? You also do want to have a rich best friend. Now, I know what I said earlier. You are rich, others are poor, even other rich people. That is not exactly true. You do want to have one rich friend that you do see as a little lesser, but still above other pores. And why is that? Because you want to have the rich bitch, the gap sesh. You want to be able to discuss all the woes and trials that you're facing as a rich kid unfiltered, right? So when you go on vacations, when you have that car, how many cars can I get for my birthday issue, you want to be able to discuss it with your rich friend, right? And you want to be able to discuss strategies as to how to blend in together, right? But you also do not want to be too close with this person, because then it starts to become a little bit of an issue. Because other pores are going to look at you and be like, well, I had a sneaking suspicion about this about you. And they're hanging out with this other person that I also have a sneaking suspicion of, that they're both rich. So perhaps they are both rich and they're just gravitating towards each other. So you want to only hang out in private, and in public, stay away from each other. Okay? Okay. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of a prologue as to what kind of emotions you might feel in the future. Okay, this is not going to be fun, and a trigger warning for you. It is very depressing for a rich Nepo baby. It is so sad, So like, the trauma of being a Nepo baby and being a rich kid is that like you feel isolated. You may have a throne of gold, but you're the only one that gets to sit in it. And it's so sad for you, because, you may not have to worry about bills, and you may not have to worry about how you're going to survive. You may never be homeless. And you honestly don't even have to worry about, changing political spaces, because you can afford to go wherever you want, and you can pay to be a citizen or a resident in any country, because they'll of course take your money. So really, you in fact might even call yourself a world citizen instead of just a citizen of whatever country you're born in. But no matter what, it's going to make you feel isolated, right? And so you're going to have to stick with your family. Yeah, you're going to be very family focused. Your parents are going to be very there for you. And then when they're gone, it's going to be very difficult for you. You might run through a few partners, but you always want to make sure that you have a very, very good prenup. Anyway, you're also going to feel very alone, very similar to isolated. You're going to feel very, very alone, and that's okay. It's okay to be alone. You're also going to be treated as privileged. I talked about this earlier. The word privileged is discriminatory. The poorest came in and assigned this new identity to us, privileged, and we had to accommodate and make space for them, as if, we have identities of our own. We don't identify as being privileged, and so we aren't. Aren't they all about identity and what, they should respect us and respect that we don't want to be called privileged. So, I think that, it's one of those things where, the social issues, there's a long way to go for poors to get better with their social issues. And, it's until then, we're just going to have to bear the brunt of some discrimination. Yeah. And also, it's going to be very difficult for you to be an ally, for like other people of color or for queer people or for whatever it is. It's going to be very difficult for you to be an ally because, you want to be an ally, but you also don't want to risk any of your money, right? You don't want to waste any of the money that you have, and your parents might not allow you to do that when you're younger. So what's going to end up happening is that you're going to be in situations where you feel like, oh, you're an ally, but not so much so that you would like give up some of your money to some organizations, or maybe you would help anybody. No. I mean, you have, growing up, you're likely going to have your own, suite near your school that's about maybe 5,000 square feet. And, you might encounter a few, homeless queer youth that, could use a place to stay, and you could definitely afford to put them somewhere, but you're not going to do that because that would be a waste of money, right? So you want to be an ally, but it's very difficult because and your money is very tied up. It's not liquid. It's definitely not. You can't make it liquid either. There's no such thing as liquid money is just wasteful money, and you don't want that. No. So you're never going to have liquid money. But of course, if you need to buy something like a new car or something, then of course you can make that. You can liquidize some money for that. I mean, that's really important. But you can't do that for a life in need. A poor in need. No. Anyway, those are going to be the main issues that we're going to that you are going to encounter growing up. Hopefully I have set you up properly. Of course, I do know that you have just been born and that you are sort of still in the like wiggly goo stage. But I do see that you have a Platinum Amex card on you. Can I have that to pay for? Yes. Thank you very much. Okay. And then I'm just going to go ahead and... Okay. Here you go. Okay. All right. Well, we are all good to go. Of course, I am going to see you back here probably, once a week or so, just to make sure I get this drilled in you, right? Because I'm sure you're going to remember some of this, and I'm sure you might forget some of the information. And if you make any poor friends, you have to run it by me because I have to approve them. If you make any rich friends, we have to figure out what their net worth is and make sure that it's lower than your parents. Otherwise, I can't approve them. Also, the private jet is for your own personal use. It is your private jet. Your parents did buy it for you as sort of a birthday present. Yeah. They were just really excited for you, to be honest. So yeah, this is your private jet. Go wherever you want. I hear there is a very, very good sort of restaurant over. Yeah, it is across the way, across the ocean. But I'll send you the name. Okay. Yeah. I'll send it to the pilot because I think it'll be good. Yeah, they do wonderful breast milk there, so I am sure you will enjoy that. Okay. All right then. Well, I'll see you later at your next appointment. Okay. Bye-bye.